Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Rebecca Shrook, Senior Director of Alumni Relations here at Jefferson, and I want to thank you again for spending an hour of your Thursday night with us, and we're going to get started. So, welcome all our Jefferson alumni. Wonderful to have you with us. We have over 75 alumni joining us from 15 states. So you can see on the map where everyone is coming from, and that's why we love to do these online events, because we may not always get to an area where you live, but we try to do a variety of different events so you can still join in with your fellow Jefferson alumni. And just so you know, we have a few upcoming events. Spring Cleaning Your Wallet on April 9th. The Keto Craze, which is another online event, so please be sure to join us from that. And the Her Snack Factory Tour, the tastiest tour in town. There's a few other events, so please make sure to check out the full calendar at jefferson.edu/alumni events. And without further ado, I'm going to give control over to Dr. Jessica Grossman, class of '99 here at Jefferson, and we're so happy that she was able to join us this evening. And Dr. Grossman, I'm going to give you control, and you can start your wonderful presentation. Thank you again.
California. So I saw on the map that there's a couple of folks in California as well. And I wanted to say that I hope you're all enjoying your online reception kit. Rachel told me that there's some cookies in there and some tea, but I think that she left out the wine, and I will let you know when I'm done with this talk. I will be going to enjoy a California Chardonnay, so hopefully some of you are cozy in your PJs at home and having a nice glass of wine. And it is my pleasure to be with you this evening and to share a little bit first about myself, and then a little bit about contraception and what's going on in the United States today. As Rachel said, I am a graduate of Jefferson Medical College. I graduated in '99. And as a medical student, I witnessed firsthand, as I'm sure some of you have as well as alumni, the gaps between women's health and the healthcare system. And as a young female, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I went into entrepreneurship in order to innovate in ways that women can access healthcare. And so merging together both women's health and technology was incredibly important to me. And some of that really stemmed from my frustrations, which I'm sure many of you on the line also felt during their residency. And it wasn't just from the lack of sleep, although that was a challenge, but frustrations regarding many of the issues that women face in accessing medicines and procedures. In particular, I was very moved by the way that we were still doing really a big invasive surgery for fibroid tumors, and that motivated me to start my first company called Gynesonics, which I started in 2005 based on a invention that I had for fibroid tumors. And then I did several things after that, including I worked for a time at Johnson & Johnson, worked in a company in Southern California called Sense for Baby. And along the way, I came on the board of Medicines 360, where I am CEO today. Medicines 360 is a nonprofit, and I was on the board for several years, and I was passionate about the organization's mission and values in closing critical gaps in healthcare. And so ultimately, I came in as CEO in 2015. Trying to get my slides going. There we go. Oops. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Medicines 360. where I work today, because it is unique. It's a nonprofit pharmaceutical company, as I said, and I get asked all the time, isn't that an oxymoron? How can you be both a nonprofit and a pharma company? And I believe that we are the only one. We are mission-driven, and we have a mission to expand access to medicines for women, regardless of where they live, what kind of insurance coverage they have, or what kind of socioeconomic status. We do have a product. We have a single product. It's a hormonal IUD called LILETTA. And we really wanted to make that product available and affordable for all women so that they didn't have barriers. And I'll talk more as I get going about some of the barriers that women do face in accessing contraception. So, you know, when I'm asked about what does it mean that you're a nonprofit, what I say is that we answer to patients and not to our shareholders. Our shareholders really are the public. We got started in 2009 because of the high unplanned pregnancy rates here in the United States. And we believe that women must have access and choice around family planning options so that they can choose if and when they want to decide to have children. We got FDA approval initially for our product LILETTA in 2015. And since then, the product has been distributed to about 575,000 women here in the U.S., including about 180,000 low-income women. And our goal is to reach 1 million women around the U.S., of course, who want to receive hormonal IUD contraception. But we feel like if we don't do it, especially in this current landscape, then no one else is going to do it. So that's a little bit about me and Medicine 360. I'm going to move on and talk about contraception and family planning, just a little bit on the background. And I don't know if Rachel mentioned this, but I will be answering questions. You can put them into the chat box as we're going. Tell me, Rachel, if that's right, and she'll read them at the end. Did I get that correct?
There's a question and answer box, so they can, sorry, I forgot that. So please feel free to put all your questions in there, and at the end of Dr. Grossman's presentation, we'll go over them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you know, many people don't think about unintended pregnancy here in the U.S., and they think about that this is more of a problem in the developing world and in Africa. But here in the United States, unintended pregnancy remains a significant health challenge and holds women back from living their best and fullest lives. In 2011, a staggering 45% of pregnancies in the U.S. were unintended, and that accounted for 2.8 million pregnancies annually. And this can prevent women from achieving their educational goals and advancing their careers. About 42% of these unplanned pregnancies end in abortion, and reducing the rate of unintended pregnancy is a national health goal, according to the CDC. 68% of the births resulting from unintended pregnancies are paid for by public insurance programs and primarily Medicaid. So they have a real economic impact on our healthcare system as well. Access is important because not all forms of contraception are created equally. Physician-administered contraceptive products, including implants and IUDs, which are often called LARCs, that's short for long-acting and reversible contraception, are the highest effective products, highest efficacy, but they're also the highest cost. Therefore, access to the most effective contraception is limited by the ability of some clinics and hospitals to purchase and stock these products. And if providers can't stock the products, then women may not be able to access them, and then leading to these high rates of unplanned pregnancy. We forget, but contraception is one of the greatest public health accomplishments in the 20th century, and it has altered the role that women can play both in society and in the workplace. It's really changed the contribution women can make to the economy and the workforce. Unintended pregnancy is also associated with increased risk of problems for both the mom and the baby. If a pregnancy is not planned before conception, a woman may not be in optimal health for childbearing. That makes sense, right? For example, a woman with an unintended pregnancy could delay prenatal care because she may not know she's pregnant, and that could affect the health of the baby. Unintended and teenage pregnancies are also associated with delayed prenatal care, higher fetal exposure to tobacco and alcohol, and poor health outcomes for newborns, as well as negative economic and social consequences for both mothers and their children. So I put here a picture of one of the old birth control pill packs. As you can see, this is sort of an older pack, but many of you might, I don't know the age demographic we have here, but many of you might remember these birth control pills. But one of the important things also is the use of barrier contraceptions can also prevent pregnancy as well as the transmission of HIV and other sexually transmitted infections. The timeline of contraception, believe it or not, is less than 75 years ago. In 1960, the Food and Drug Administration approved the first oral contraceptive pill. Before that, only condoms were available. So wasn't that long ago before wasn't that long ago that the pill was introduced. In addition, the Title X Family Planning Program, which I'll talk more about in a few slides, in a few minutes, was enacted in 1970, a federal national program around family planning. In 1984, the FDA approved the copper T IUD, which is still on the market today. It's called Paragard. It's changed hands over several different manufacturers. The manufacturer who now owns it is called Cooper Surgical. In 1992, the FDA approved Depo-Provera, also known as the shot, which is an injectable 3-month contraceptive, very popular. In 2001, the FDA approved Mirena, the first hormonal IUD, and the first hormonal patch was approved. In 2007, Implanon, which was a 2-rod implant system, was approved by the FDA. I don't know if any of you remember Norplant, but I certainly do, and that was a 7-rod system. And then in 2015, FDA approved LILETTA, the second hormonal IUD approved that was competitive with Mirena. On the bottom, I have some of the different legislative acts that have occurred around this same time. Interestingly, President Johnson signed the bill that became Medicaid in 1965. In 1972, Medicaid was amended to make family planning services mandatory and to provide a federal matching of 90%. That's still in effect today. In 1992, Congress enacted the 340B drug pricing program, which is a program that allows certain clinics to access lower cost drugs. In 1998, there was a major legislative victory for Planned Parenthood around prescribing contraceptive devices and using insurance coverage. And then in 2006, emergency contraception was approved for sale over the counter. So those were things like Plan B that are approved for over-the-counter sale to men and women over the age of 18. And then in 2012, the Affordable Care Act was approved. Now, just a few days ago, a judge said that the Affordable Care Act is no longer valid, so we'll have to see where that goes. But I will talk about the Affordable Care Act because certainly for women, the Affordable Care Act has been very important to really change the way our health care is delivered, and I'm going to address that. So with all of these changes in contraception that started happening around 1960, unintended pregnancy rates have declined. What I want to call your attention to is this line here of all women. You can see that in 1981, the unintended pregnancy rates for all women was almost as high as 60%. And when I say unintended, I mean unplanned, or a woman was not actively seeking to become pregnant at that time. So you can see since 1981, the line for all women has declined. And for all women, we're now around 40%, which is better than 60%, but still, we still got a ways to go there. But if you look at some of these other lines, and this is the rate per 1,000 women, there are higher proportions of unintended pregnancies in the following groups: adolescents and young women, women who are of racial or ethnic minorities, and women with lower levels of education and income. Even in our own country, many women can't afford the most effective contraception and can only afford access to condoms and pills, which oftentimes aren't that efficacious or need to be taken and used every single time one has sex. The cost of contraception still prevents many women from accessing an option that works best for them. And this is a significant public health concern that we cannot turn a blind eye to. This is a chart on the contraceptive effectiveness methods. I actually adapted this chart. It's from the CDC. And it shows the most effective methods up here on the top are the IUD, the implant, and sterilization. And then the methods become progressively less effective as they go down. Obviously, no method is not too effective, and you see down here withdrawal, fertility awareness. If you do them perfectly correct, they can be 70 to 80% effective. However, again, drawing your eye back up here to the top, the long-acting and reversible contraceptives are more than 45 times more effective than birth control pills in typical use. Also, the hormonal IUD is the favored product of female OBGYNs. If you survey, 10 female OBGYNs and ask them what product they're using, and it's an incredibly high amount, like 9 out of 10 are using hormonal IUDs. So contraceptive effectiveness has a critical role in helping women avoid unintended pregnancy. And here you can also see there's typical use versus the typical use means how effective a method is during actual use in the population, including using a method in a way that is not correct or not consistent. Many of the unintended pregnancies are on women who are in women who are using some form of birth control. They're just not using it effectively or as intended. So they're taking a birth control pill, but maybe not taking it every day, forgetting sometimes, using condoms, but not using them all the time. So that's why these set it and forget it methods are so effective, because the user does not have to do anything. And the use of these methods has continuously risen, but as I said before, they're really quite expensive. And so they remain out of reach for many low-income women. So up next, I'm going to talk about the Affordable Care Act and the dramatic change that it's meant to women's health care. So here are the basics around the Affordable Care Act. As you may recall, it was signed into law in 2010, and it really made great changes in women's health care. Some of the changes requires that most health insurance plans now cover certain recommended preventive services for no out-of-pocket costs for women. So that means women should not have to pay for things like mammograms, cervical cancer screenings, well women visits, birth control, domestic violence, HIV, STI screening, screening for diabetes, and breastfeeding support. That means that women should have to pay no copay or should not have to pay anything out of pocket. The ACA covers one type of birth control per person from all of the 18 FDA-approved methods at no out-of-pocket cost. And as I said, no out-of-pocket cost means no copays, no coinsurance, or other out-of-pocket costs. It's now covered by insurance. Women can also no longer be denied health insurance because of a pre-existing health condition such as breast cancer, pregnancy, or depression. The ACA also expanded Medicaid coverage for all low-income individuals making less than about $17,000 annually. But not all states have adopted the Medicaid expansion. There's still about 14 states that have not expanded, and I think I saw on the map some of you may live in some of those states. Next, you may ask, what are the 18 types of FDA-approved contraception? Now, I won't read all of them, but I'll highlight a few. The first two are interesting: sterilization surgery. So in the ACA, sterilization surgery should now be paid for by your insurance. Surgical sterilization with an implant, which was formerly called Assure, that actually was taken off the market at the end of 2018. So I guess maybe now there's only 17 types of contraception. Then the other next ones I've already talked a little bit about: the implantable rods, IUDs, the shot. There's a whole series of oral contraceptions, both with and without estrogens, the patch, the ring, then a few different types of barrier methods, the diaphragm, sponge, and cap, female condoms, spermicide, and then also emergency contraception, both types, Plan B, the morning after pill, or a different type called Ella, should be covered. However, you can see there's all of these different methods. Many of them are still hormonal methods, and I'm going to talk at the end about some new contraceptive methods that are on the horizon, not yet FDA approved, that are non-hormonal, because there remains a big unmet need for non-hormonal methods for women who don't want to take hormones. But many different elements need to be considered by women, men, and couples at any given point in their lifetime when choosing the most appropriate contraceptive method for them. These elements include safety and effectiveness, availability, and acceptability. And informed choice of contraceptive methods is really an essential guiding principle. We don't want anyone to feel coerced into having to accept a method that is recommended by their physician. And contraceptive counseling, when applicable, should be non-directional by the physician, and it could be an important contributor to the successful use of a contraceptive method. Also, in choosing a method, one does need to note that dual protection from HIV and other STIs should also be considered. And although the hormonal contraceptive, IUDs, and implants are highly effective for preventing pregnancy, they do not protect against STIs or HIV. So it's important that patients note that, if you have patients, or if you're not a patient and just a layperson, that you note that as well. So, how do we know that the Affordable Care Act was working? What this graphic shows you is how many women per year paid zero out-of-pocket cost. So the blue is in the fall of 2012, before the ACA, and the red is in the spring of 2014, after the ACA. And so before ACA, only 15% of women paid zero out-of-pocket costs for the pill after 67% paid zero. So you can see that this was just when the ACA was implemented, but these numbers have increased substantially so that many women, almost 100% of insured women, are paying 0% out of pocket today. And this is important because it's actually saving women quite a bit of money. A health affairs study from 2015 showed that the ACA saved women over $1.4 billion that they were paying out of pocket on birth control. But remember also, this is just for insured women. What if a woman still doesn't have insurance? She is still paying out of pocket. So another graphic here, I love these graphics that show the whole United States so I can get a kind of a snapshot of what's going on in what state. This is a graphic from 2016. It's from the Kaiser Family Foundation. And it shows the uninsured rates among women that are non-elderly. So I call that contracepting women, usually women between 18 and 45 or so, by state and by Medicaid expansion status. So the blue states are states that have expanded Medicaid, where the orange states are states that are not expanded Medicaid. This is a couple years old, so this map looks a little bit different today. But what you can see here is, while millions of women gained coverage through the expansion of Medicaid, and you can see like in California, only 9% of women are uninsured, whereas in Texas, it was 19%. So millions of people gained coverage, but states can decide not to implement the expansion, and that leaves many women without an affordable coverage option. Under the ACA, Medicaid eligibility was extended to nearly all low-income individuals with incomes at or below 138% of the poverty level. And so even though the intention for Medicaid expansion was to be national, in June 2012, the Supreme Court ruling essentially made it optional. We'll see what this recent court ruling did, but what would be interesting is all of this could be reversed. We live in a very dynamic time. So if you want to get a sense of how many more women have coverage today, this is a graphic that showed in 2010, about 35 million women were either uninsured or underinsured. And that really decreased dramatically. 26 million women gained coverage, and there's still some left. There's still about 9 million women who are either uninsured or underinsured. But this was really a dramatic change to help women get access to affordable care and to also get access to some very basic preventative services. So the key drivers here was expansion of contraceptive coverage, and expansion of Medicaid and family planning waivers, which I'll talk about in a minute, and state plan amendments. So the state expansion under the Affordable Care Act wasn't just for Medicaid, but states could also have individual waivers for family planning and state plan amendments. So again, this really changed the landscape for women on how they were able to access care and afford birth control, and really changed their out-of-pocket spending. So, as I said, not only did the Affordable Care Act change the Medicaid, but it also changed these family planning state options. The manner in which family planning services are financed and organized is unique within the Medicaid program. All state Medicaid programs must offer some level of family planning benefits. And historically, states have expanded their programs by securing approval of a waiver of federal policy from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And most of the expansion states, those blue states that you saw on the map before, granted coverage for family planning solely on the basis of income to individuals not previously covered. So not only did they have more individuals who had Medicaid, they also had more individuals who were able to access family planning through this waiver process. And then there's also a handful of states who have received federal approval for more limited expansion that continue coverage for family planning for individuals that leave the Medicaid program. So unlike a waiver, which is time limited, these are called state plan amendments, and they're a permanent change to a state's Medicaid program. So even if the Affordable Care Act is struck down, many states have enacted their own state plans and waivers that will keep contraceptive family planning care alive in those states for women. And there's great information on this on the Kaiser Family Foundation website, as well as the Guttmacher Institute publishes a lot of really good information about this if you're interested. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the new regulations that have been going on in this administration. The changes in Title 10, and I'm going to tell you what that is, so don't worry if you don't know what it is. It says Title X here, but that X is for 10. Changes in healthcare insurance coverage, cost, and accessibility. So, Title 10. If you remember this, I mentioned this earlier in that timeline. It was enacted with bipartisan support in the 1970s. It's a family planning program. It's part of the Public Health Service Act. It is a federal grant program dedicated to providing individuals with comprehensive family planning services. Again, enacted by bipartisan support in the 70s. So for more than 40 years, the Title X Family Planning Program has served as the nation's only dedicated source of federal funding for family planning. It's annually funded by Congress through the discretionary appropriations process. And what the Title X program supports, it gives out grants to health clinics that qualify. They have to apply for it and qualify. And it generally supports high-quality, culturally sensitive family planning services and other preventative health care like cancer screenings, mammograms, sexually transmitted infection screenings for low-income, underinsured, or insured individuals who may otherwise lack access to health care. And the family planning, the Title X program has historically played a really central component. It's a very high quality program based on evidence-based methods that the clinics who qualify need to provide all methods. They need to provide contraceptive counseling in a non-coercive manner. And just to give you a sense, in 2017, there were over 3,000 healthcare professionals across the United States who received this federal grant funding from Title X services, including nurse practitioners, physicians, physician assistants, certified nurse midwives, etc., all across the 50 states. So very important program. It's only about $320 million a year, and it's flat spending every single year, but it's a grant program that really tries to provide comprehensive counseling and care to low-income and uninsured women. So you may have heard in the news, there's been some recent administrative actions that have increased restrictions on the Title X program and on the types of providers that may participate. And this is scary for many young women. As I said, Title X provides these grants for family planning, counseling, and services. It's administered by the Department of Health and Human Services, and it focuses on low-income people at over 3,500 sites. such as public health departments, nonprofit community health centers. However, there is a new rule that this administration came out with that could limit the availability and access to the most effective forms of birth control. As I said before, the Title X program supported access to all 18 methods. That is now gone. So they have said, you no longer need to provide all 18 methods in this Title X family planning program. You can provide one method. That's okay. You don't need to provide high quality counseling. So they've really changed the program. And what is scary for me about that is that that could limit the availability of and access to the most effective forms of birth control. And should this ruling go into effect, it could be devastating for low-income women in need of affordable contraception. And that they could, whereas traditionally they were able to access anything that they wanted of all 18 FDA-approved methods, that's now changed where they may not be able to receive any method or only one method. It also limits what providers can counsel on, and something called a so-called gag rule that limits that providers can no longer counsel on abortion. So what that means is that even if a young woman comes in to the clinic and says, I'm pregnant, I want an abortion, you can't say, oh, we don't do that here, but you can go down the street. You can say nothing now in the new rule. So that's a little scary too, and that's why people are calling it the gag rule. So moving on, there has been a lot of changes in health insurance coverage and recent policy rollbacks and threats, including the potential to repeal in entirety these preventative services for women. New rules from the current administration that were passed in 2017 offer an exemption to any employer that objects to covering contraception on the basis of either religious beliefs or just on moral convictions. There remains a lot of legislative and administrative threats to defund Planned Parenthood, and then threats to repeal, which we just saw something that came down this week, and potentially to appeal the Affordable Care Act. So stay tuned. It's a little bit of a scary time for those who are interested in contraceptive coverage, such as myself. Okay, so let's look forward now to what's new, what got approved by the FDA in 2018, and then I'll give you a sneak peek, if you will, at some things that are not yet FDA approved but are on the horizon. So in 2018, the FDA approved LILETTA for 5 years of contraceptive use for women from the age of 16 to 45. This was based on an ongoing clinical trial. It is the largest clinical trial to date in the U.S. of a hormonal IUD. 17,000 women were enrolled. And what makes this clinical trial a little bit different than other clinical trials in the birth control space is that the clinical trial was really done to mimic the demographics of the United States and to include a lot of women that would not normally be included in the clinical trial, including obese women, overweight women, and even morbidly obese women, so that we could really prove that the hormonal IUD was effective no matter what a woman's BMI is. So that was approved for 5 years of contraception in 2018. There was also approved a new contraceptive ring. This contraceptive ring was developed by the Population Council. It's called Amphora, and it's a new chemical entity. It's a nesterone and an ethinyl estradiol, which is old, but the nesterone was new. What makes this unique is it is a ring that provides contraception for an entire year. So 13 cycles, one ring. And so what a woman would do is they would purchase it, put it in, keep it in for 4 weeks, take it out for a cycle and then put it back in. So it's meant to have, it has enough hormone in it to last for 13 cycles. And that was also approved by the FDA in 2018. And it was licensed to a company called Therapeutics MD, which is in Florida. And one of the nice things that they agreed to do was to also provide significantly reduced pricing to the federally designated Title X clinics. Another new approval in 2018, which was a little bit controversial, quite different, is the Natural Cycles birth control app. This was the first app that was approved for contraception. Basically what it is it's an app along with a thermometer that a woman uses every day and inputs data into the app about her menstrual cycle as well as her temperature, and the app tells her essentially when she's ovulating, when she's most fertile, etc. Now, it did have a good efficacy rate in perfect use. The failure rate was only 1.8% in perfect use, but in typical use, meaning people who would typically use a product, the failure rate was a little bit higher at 6.5%. And this is an interesting method. Again, the first app approved by the FDA. It's cost by a subscription service, so it costs about $80 a year. I don't believe it's covered by insurance. Okay, now turning to things on the horizon. A male contraceptive gel is on the horizon. It's also being developed by the Population Council, and it is a nesterone testosterone gel, which is reversible and designed to be absorbed through the skin on the man with minimal side effects. It's currently being tested in clinical trials. It's in a phase 2B clinical trial. There are 3 sites in the U.S. that are enrolling. The researchers plan to enroll approximately 420 couples in the study, and the male volunteers will use the gel daily for 4 to 12 weeks to determine that they tolerate the formulation. What is supposed to happen is that the sperm levels are supposed to adequately decline while they're using the gel. So very interesting. Stay tuned on this one. I'm quite curious to see if men will actually sign up for this and use a gel, but we will see. Next is a gel for women. It's called Amphora. This is also not yet FDA approved. It's a multi-purpose vaginal pH regulator, which is a mouthful. And it's designed to regulate the vaginal pH within the normal range, even in the presence of sperm. So it's very novel. It's non-hormonal, and it's in a phase 3 clinical trial. Study enrolled about 1,400 women, and the top line efficacy dates are pretty good, 86% efficacious in typical use and 98% when used per protocol. So I believe that this is getting submitted to the FDA this year, so stay tuned for this one as well. Another novel non-hormonal method that's being studied, something called Ovaprene. It's a non-hormonal contraceptive ring intended to be used for multiple weeks. Again, no hormones. So also represents sort of a new approach. It's a ring that goes into the vagina and sits up near the cervix, but there's no cream or foam or spermicide or anything that is put in with it. What happens is the ring has an elution of a substance that's inside the ring. It releases ferrous gluconate, which is actually iron molecules that create a spermiostatic environment. So those molecules of iron that are released will kill the sperm. And then there's a mesh so that the sperm can't get through it. And so this is also currently in phase 2B studies. So then there is also, as I said before, Assure, which was a permanent contraceptive method that was actually brought on the market, I think around 2010, just got off the market last year. So there are no, what was novel about it is it was placed through a hysteroscope, so it can be done minimally invasively, whereas the other sterilization methods are done via a laparoscope, so they're done in the operating room. So this FemBloc is a permanent contraceptive in clinical trials, not FDA approved, that is also a non-surgical permanent contraceptive solution that could be performed in a medical office setting. Basically, a biopolymer is injected into the uterus, into the fallopian tubes, that initiates a wound healing response in the fallopian tube and forms a permanent closure with the patient's own scar tissue. And then that biopolymer completely exits the uterine cavity over time. So they've done a small safety study in 49 women showing that the device was safe, and now they're doing a multi-center pivotal study with 500 patients to establish safety and efficacy. So that's another interesting one to stay tuned for. So, as you can see, a lot of new interesting methods, especially non-hormonal methods, on the table for the future in clinical studies. One male method that is hormonal, and that's really interesting because we really haven't had a male method aside from condoms and vasectomy in decades. So that'll be really interesting. But I also want to say, we have made significant progress in expanding access to contraception and reducing unplanned pregnancy. But millions of women still remain in need of affordable contraceptive. It's still about 9 million women across the U.S. who have no coverage, and that could be increasing substantially. The current policy environment is creating barriers to access where before we had pretty robust family planning measures in place through the Title X program. And that's being changed right now by the administration. As I said, some of the fundamentals of the Title X program that provided evidence-based contraceptive counseling are really changing. And that is something that I think we all should be worried about because it's going to really change the way family planning is provided in our country. And there does remain a significant unmet need for non-hormonal contraceptive. You saw a few of those are working their way through clinical trials. The ideal contraceptive product would also have a low side effect profile. Many of the hormonal products do have a side effect profile that patients don't like. So, hopefully in the next decade or so, we'll go from 18 methods to 20 methods, and there'll be considerable research and development work done on bringing more methods to more women. So I hope that some of you have questions. I hope I didn't bore you too much. I hope you're sipping your tea and having your cookies and hopefully having a little wine too, and have some questions for me. I hope I gave you some new facts that you didn't know. Oh, one thing I do want to say is at Medicines 360, the company that I am CEO of, we are on Instagram and Facebook. It's at Medicines 360. We try to put inspiring messages about women's health care. If anyone wants to follow us, we would love that.
Great. Thank you again, Dr. Grossman. We do have a few questions coming through. Someone did ask, can you comment on the future of LILETTA, i.e. FDA approval for more than 5 years of use?
Oh, that's a good question. We have submitted our 6-year data but we have not heard back from the FDA, but the 6-year data is submitted. So I cannot comment on if it will be approved for 6 years, but I can tell you that we have submitted it for 6 years. We've also started another phase 3 trial for LILETTA for heavy menstrual bleeding, and we started that last year, so that's ongoing as well. I'm glad to hear there's some LILETTA users on the phone, hopefully.
Great. And then someone also asked, what are some sure and true methods of birth control for nursing moms?
Oh, that's a good question. So for nursing moms, I believe that the only thing that's been widely studied is the progesterone-only pill, oftentimes called the mini pill. The hormonal IUD has not been widely studied, although many people do prescribe it off-label in nursing moms, as well as the copper IUD. I would welcome if any OBGYN alumni have an answer, they can type it in the chat box. I don't know if that's possible, or they can type it to you, Rachel, as a question as well. But I would say for a nursing mom, either the progesterone-only pill or a copper IUD.
Great. I'm going to do another call for any more questions. Let's see if any more comes through. We're right at our 8:30 mark, so I understand some people might be signing out, but I just want to give it another call for any more questions. Oh, here we go. So someone did say that doctors that they work with use the Mirena IUD for nursing moms.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else mentioned for nursing moms, I use hormonal and non-hormonal IUDs as well as progesterone-only OCP.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So both Mirena and LILETTA are not FDA approved for nursing moms, but it sounds like some doctors are using those off-label.
Yeah, so let's see. Any other questions? I want to let everyone know that we did record this evening's webinar, so we will be able to post this on our YouTube channel, and we'll send out the link to everyone who joined us and everyone who registered. Oh, here's a question. Do you find young women using Nexplanon more than any?
Nexplanon. We have seen the rates of Nexplanon utilization really increasing. And frankly, I'm not 100% sure why. I don't know if there's just been more advertising, more interest, but we have seen the rates of young women and all women using Nexplanon increasing very significantly. However, many women don't like the side effect profile, that there can be breakthrough bleeding or bleeding and spotting. According to our research, about 25% of women actually remove it after the first year because they don't like the bleeding profile, but we have seen a lot of utilization.
Great, and I think, Dr. Grossman, that might be the end of our questions, and if any are sent to alumni at jefferson.edu, I can always forward them along to you as well after the fact. But
I would love that. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, and as I said, so is Medicine 360. Happy to follow up and answer any questions. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to me. I hope I gave you some new news, some good news, some bad news. But happy to follow up with any of you, and have a great night.
Thank you again, Dr. Grossman. Thank you all for joining us. And again, we'll send out the recording link on our YouTube. And everyone have a wonderful Thursday and a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.